Hi guys, Math Cheetah here. I'm here with Hilly. Hilly's a sugar glider, and she wants to teach you Lesson 3-9, Modeling Decimals with Base 10 Blocks. She's a little scared of decimals. Let's see if we can help her. Let's start with writing the following amounts using a dollar sign and a decimal point. Dollar and cent notation. $3, 5 dimes, and 1 penny. That would be $3.51. 3 dimes and 6 pennies. I would have $0, and I would have 36 cents. $2 and 7 dimes. I would have $2.70. 9 pennies. In dollar and cent notation, that would be $0 and 9 cents. What do you notice about the 2 places after the decimal point in money? 5 dimes, 1 penny. 6 pennies, 3 dimes. 7 dimes, no pennies. 9 pennies, no dimes. So, if our one whole is $1, how many dimes are in a dollar? That would be 10. What fraction of $1 is 1 dime? 1/10. How many pennies are in a dollar? 100. So what fraction of $1 is 1 penny? 1/100th. In dollar and cent notation, before the decimal point we have our wholes, or how many dollars we have. Then after the decimal point, we have our tenths. And the next place after the decimal point is the hundredths. And you can think of these as pennies and dimes, tenths and hundredths. Now, let's take a look at this with base 10 blocks. Our flat is equal to 100. 1 long is equal to 10, so it's the same as a dime. And 1 cube is equal to 1, and that's the same as a penny. So, now the flat is our whole. And if I take my longs and I cover my flat with longs, how many longs would it take to cover my whole? Well, it would take 10. What fraction of my flat is 1 long? It's 1/10. So let's talk about this as a decimal and a word and a fraction. 1 long is 1/10. 1/10. 1/10 of my flat. All right, so how many longs to show 2/10? I am covering 2/10 of my flat. Remember, my flat is my whole. This decimal says 3/10. My longs are my tenths, and if I cover my whole with 3 longs, I have covered 3/10 of my whole. And here, I'm going to cover 4/10 of my whole. How many cubes would it take to cover my whole flat? The cubes are like pennies. It would take 100 of them. So what fraction of my flat is 1 cube? It's 1/100th. Just like a penny is 1/100th of a dollar. This decimal says 100th. These words say 100th. This fraction says 100th. A cube is 100th of my flat. A penny is 100th of a dollar. So how many cubes to show this decimal? This decimal says 5/100ths. 5/100ths. I'm going to use 5 cubes. And I am covering 5/100ths of my whole. What fraction of the grid is 5 cubes? Well, it's 5/100ths. Written as a fraction, written as a decimal. So now I want to show this decimal. This says 16/100ths. How can I show 16/100ths with my base 10 blocks? I can think about this as 110 and 6/100ths and I am covering 16/100ths of my flat. This decimal says 21/100ths. 10, 20, 21. Or 2/10ths, because these are smaller equal parts of my whole, and 1/100th, another smaller equal part of my whole. The flat in this case is my whole. 39/100ths, I would use 3 of my tenths. I have a 3 in my tenths place, and I would use 9 of my hundredths. This is in my hundredths place. So if I put 7 longs on my flat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If I place these 7 longs on my flat, what fraction of my flat is my 7 longs? Seven out of 10 equal parts, 7/10ths, because it would take 10 of these longs to cover my flat. I have 7 of them in place. As a decimal, I would write 0.7. 7/10ths, 7/10ths, 7/10ths. Now, can we find an equivalent fraction that has a denominator of 100 and it will be equal to 7/10ths? So let's think, how many of these cubes would it take to be equivalent to my 7/10ths? Remember, the cubes are hundredths. 70 of these cubes would cover my 7/10, because each of these tenths could be covered by 10 cubes. They're each 100th. So that would make 70, 10 here, 20, 30, 40 cubes, 50 cubes, 60 cubes, 70 cubes. That would be 70 out of 100. So how would we write the fraction 70/100ths as a decimal? This says 70/100ths. How would we use base 10 blocks to show that 7/10 is equal to 70/100ths? We would place our 7/10, and then we would use our cubes, which are the hundredths, and we would place 10 cubes on each of our long, and we would end up laying out 70 cubes on top of the 7/10. Now, we're saying that these fractions are equivalent, 7/10 and 70/100ths, and we're showing it with the base 10 blocks, but do you remember how to show it with multiplication or division? So let's take the fraction 7/10, and let's use our multiplication rule to come up with an equivalent fraction. So if I did times 10 to my numerator and denominator, 7 times 10 would give me 70, and 10 times 10 would give me 100. So using this multiplication of my numerator and denominator by the same number, I know that 7/10 is equal to 70/100ths. Okay, Fraction Ferret wanted to say goodbye. We learned a little bit more about decimals to the tenths and hundredths place. See you tomorrow.